You're listening to the Quint's podcast.
On 4th June, a Delhi-based Twitter user by the name of Amandeep tweeted, quote, "My dad has high fever. We need to shift him to a hospital. I'm standing outside LNJP hospital and then not taking him in. He has coronavirus, high fever and breathing problems. He won't survive without help. Please help." End quote. But this is not a lone incident of a patient not finding a hospital bed in Delhi. There are also similar accounts like this from Mumbai. If you go to social media platforms like Twitter, it's abuzz with several such incidents, be it of coronavirus positive patients or people with other ailments, or even expecting women having to run between pillar to post, shuttling from one hospital to another, only to be told that there's no availability of beds or even ambulances. While the total tally in Mumbai crossed over 50,000 cases in Delhi, it's close to touching the 30,000th mark. So in today's podcast, let's see how the pandemic has affected India's two biggest and crowded cities, Delhi and Mumbai, the national capital and the financial capital. How prepared are the health sectors in these states in terms of hospital beds, ventilators and other facilities? Have the infrastructures come under pressure with the rising number of cases? We'll deep dive into a city-wise case study in this two-part podcast. In the first part, we'll look at the situation in Delhi. And in the second part, we'll talk about Mumbai. You're tuned in to The Big Story, the podcast where we dissect the headline-making news for you. And I'm your host, Shorbori. Making a strong pitch for the reopening of the economy, Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal on 10th May had said that we have to learn to live with coronavirus. He had said that the lockdown was meant to prepare the health sector, which Delhi has done adequately, and as a city we are better prepared to face the pandemic now. In terms of preparation, the Delhi government announced that it currently has 8,500 beds allotted for COVID-19 patients in government and private hospitals. And as per the latest government bulletin, 4,413 COVID-dedicated beds were occupied and 4,162 beds were lying vacant. Yet, there are many reports of people struggling to find admissions in hospitals around the capital, with the standard response being that there are no beds available right now. Take the case of Amandeep again. After her initial tweet on 4th June, she posted again saying that her father had died of coronavirus. She alleged that they were let down by Gangaram Hospital and then by the Delhi government-run LNJP Hospital, where they couldn't find a hospital bed for her father. Her brother Satvinder narrated the family's ordeal to the Quint. He says that he contacted several hospitals in the beginning, while Moolchand and Apollo Hospital said that they don't treat COVID-19. Max Hospitals did not have any beds, and he contacted more hospitals after that.
नेक्स्ट ऑप्शन वॉज आइदर आई गो टू गंगाराम, एम्स का मैंने ट्राई किया, बेड्स नहीं थे। मैंने सोचा कि एलएनजेपी ले जाता हूँ, बेड्स भी हैं, ट्रीटमेंट शुरू हो जाएगा, उसके बाद जो भी करना है या हम शिफ्ट कर लेंगे, जैसा भी है। कम से कम डॉक्टर्स वर सिटिंग आइडियल इन द हॉस्पिटल कैबिन जो अंदर है।
Next option was either to go to Gangaram or AIMS. I contacted AIMS, which didn't have any beds. Then I thought I'd approach LNJP hospital. We wanted the treatment to be initiated as soon as possible, and then we could think about shifting him if necessary. Doctors were sitting idle in the hospital when I went there. They asked, "How are you sure the patient had coronavirus and where was the test conducted?" When I said he was tested positive in Gangaram hospital, they asked, "Why did you get a patient from Gangaram here?" When I went back to my father, he was showing respiratory distress. Then in a moment of helplessness, I dragged the stretcher myself. Nobody was around to help me. Then I approached an autowala who wasn't wearing any protective gear to help shift my father onto the stretcher. I took him inside the hospital myself. Finally, the hospital staff saw his condition and asked for an oxygen cylinder, but by the time they could give him any help, he passed away.
उसके बाद मैंने बोला देखो, उन्होंने बस उनको डायग्नोज किया, बोला सिलेंडर लाओ। उसके बाद वो अपनी चाबियां ढूंढने लग गए सिलेंडर से, जिसे टाइट किया जाता है, और कभी कह रहे हैं ये कम आ रही है ऑक्सीजन, ज़्यादा आ रही है, इतने दिन में बॉडी कोलैप्स हो गई।
A quick search on Twitter will show that many more such patients are complaining about the same issue and asking for help. Now, on 2nd June, the Delhi government had also released the Delhi Corona app to show which hospitals have how many beds available for COVID-19 cases. If you would think that this would be of any help, it only added to more confusion. When contacted by patients or relatives of patients, some of the top hospitals like Max Hospitals, Apollo, Fortis, Holy Family Hospital, all of them said that they had no vacancies despite the app showing that they do. Tagging the Delhi government, one Twitter user by the name of Kishore Kumar wrote, quote, Delhi Corona app is not accurate. Every private hospitals that I'm calling that show vacant beds in the app to admit my father is replying that all the beds are occupied. The condition in Delhi is far more serious than projected. End quote. The discrepancy between what the reality is and what the app data shows has been causing a lot of distress to both hospitals and patients, and this misinformation is only adding to the concerns of having a dearth of beds. But the problem isn't about the availability or the unavailability of beds. Vaishali Sood, the editor of Quint, the Quint's health vertical, says that it's a question of what kind of beds are available, what condition a patient is in, and what are his or her requirements.
I think the question we should really be asking is what kind of beds. From the data available in Delhi, beds certainly are there. But how many of them are COVID care centers? These are centers where you treat mild or asymptomatic patients, and this would include your hotels, your banquet halls, repurposed rooms basically, and they fall in this category. How many of these are COVID health centers, which essentially are hospitals with basic oxygen supported beds? And then it comes to ventilators. How many of them are proper ICU beds? Now, looking at Delhi's data, this is what was the data that we had available as of yesterday. Delhi has around 4,500 COVID care center beds available. That means if you have a mild symptom and or you're asymptomatic, you can be housed in these centers. Actually, now what's happening is largely asymptomatic patients and patients with very mild symptoms are being housed in their homes itself. But for some reason, if you can't be sent for home quarantine, these are the centers and these are the beds that are available, and that's 4,500 of them. Then we have COVID health centers, which have oxygen supported beds, and there's some 95 of them. Finally, when it comes to ventilators, this is when things start to get a little difficult. Of the total 512 beds with ventilators, 248 are occupied and 264 are available. And so, as I said, you need to look a little deeper at the data. When they say we have beds available, what kind of beds? And, when you reach a hospital, what condition are you in? Are you in a very severe condition? And if you are in a severe condition, do you require ICU support and you require ventilator support? And this is where things become a little difficult. As of now, as of a short while ago, this data was not easily available.
She also says that currently the problem is not so much the lack of beds but the lack of information. Without complete information on where to go for what condition, when a patient is under distress, they're naturally being rushed to the top hospitals, which are mostly occupied.
And before Delhi government launched this Corona app, which indicates where the beds are, etc., this data was not easily available. So most patients would rush from one hospital to the other in search of a bed. And this is, you normally head out to a hospital when your patient is already in distress condition. So if your patient is already in a distress condition and you're running from one hospital to the other, and in the process you lose your life, then that's just tragic. And so I don't think it's so much currently about lack of beds. What it is about is lack of information easily accessible for citizens, and this should have been made available from day one. It shouldn't have taken them 3 months to launch this app, and that, I think, is the crux of the problem. But with each step, they have to keep the public informed. They need to create greater avenues for people to access this information. I know that this app currently is not available on iOS. It's available only on Android, and there has to be an easier way of updating Delhiites about where the beds are available for them.
And it's not just patients who are facing troubles in finding beds or troubles in meeting the hospital expenses. Even hospitals have their own set of problems. Dr. Naresh Trihan, Chairman and Managing Director of Medanta, the Medicity, talks about how the hospital is coping with this rush of admissions and what the treatment charges are based on.
You're right. It is a burden on everybody, on the public, on the patients, and also on the hospitals and caregivers, right? So I'll give you the components of it. So if you you're COVID positive, you're in a ward which is isolated, every attendant, whether it be the doctor, whether it be the nurse, whether it be the housekeeper, whether it be the food supplier, or the GDAs, everybody has to have a PPE per shift. And you cannot have, if you're in a PPA, you're on a 6-hour shift. So instead of 3 shifts, there are 4 shifts. Then they work for 2 weeks and they have to be rested for 2 weeks, which is paid for. So what you're saying is that PPE by itself will cost on an average 1,000 per person per shift. Understand that yes, that is a real cost. The cost of the room, whatever it may be, is a real cost. So the real cost was already 4,000-5,000 rupees for a double room, or 6,000-8,000 rupees for a single room, and then you add on this, it becomes a burden. No question about that. The costs have to be met with because the hospitals are already going under because people, the elective work stopped. All hospitals are borrowing money to stay afloat, to pay the salaries. That in this lockdown period, we were able to create a much larger capacity than we had before the lockdown. So that means that the preparation in the anticipation that there may be a huge spike, that we are at least ready for medium amounts of patients coming. I mean, if a crore or two come together, it'll overwhelm the system. But otherwise, we are almost like ready to take on if the numbers go up, which it's looking like it's going up now exponentially, then we will have some problems. But the good part is that 80-85% are asymptomatic or mildly symptomatic. They don't have to be inside a hospital. For them, we have created what we call COVID care facilities. So this way, large number of patients don't have to come into the hospital. Only the ones who are getting sicker, whose oxygen may be going down, whose heart rate is going up, whose respiratory rate is going up, or very high fever, prolonged fever. Those are the people who will need to be in the hospital.
But unfortunately, the chaos in Delhi's health sector doesn't end here. Some recent decisions taken by the government indicates that the health infrastructure in the city is under enormous pressure. Recently, on 6th June, a 5-member expert committee set up by the Delhi government had told the media that the capital could record 1 lakh COVID-19 cases by the end of June if we go by the current trend, and that the city would need around 15,000 beds by the end of June and close to 42,000 beds by mid-July. And interestingly, a day later on 7th June, the Delhi government declared that the government hospital beds would be reserved for residents of Delhi only except for those needing treatment related to transplants, oncology and neurosurgery. This decision, the Delhi government said, was taken anticipating the surge of cases that is expected by the end of June. But amid a lot of controversy over the move, this decision was overruled by the Lieutenant Governor, Anil Baijal, and the AAP government conceding to not reserve beds for Delhi residents only. But amid this controversy and also a steep rise in cases, on 9th June, the Delhi state government also predicted 5.5 lakh coronavirus cases by July 31st. Quoting these figures, the Delhi government also asked the Lieutenant Governor to reconsider his decision. Delhi Health Minister Satyendra Jain said, and I'm quoting him, quote, "Now we see that there might be a situation that 80,000 beds would be needed by the end of July. That too only for residents of Delhi, not outsiders. So where will this come from?" End quote. But if this is the situation now, only a few weeks into a phased opening of the economy, will the city be able to hold up much longer? We will unpack the hospital bed crisis in Mumbai in part 2 of this podcast, so stay tuned. If you like listening to this episode, please subscribe to the Big Story playlist for episodic updates. We're live on Apple, Google Podcast, Spotify, JioSaavn, and most of the other popular podcast streaming platforms. For other podcasts, please log on to the Quint website and check out the podcast section. For any feedback, shoot an email to podcasts@thequint.com.
Thanks for listening. Log on to the Quint's website and check out our other podcasts.